Oh hey, it's Wes. And today it's time for something a little bit different. K&F, also known as Kent Faith, got in touch with me and asked if I wanted to try out some of their filters. Testing ND filters, or filters of any kind, is tedious work. And so, to be honest, first thing I thought was, well, I already have some K&F filters. I got them a few years ago. And they kind of suck. But that was then, and this is now. So let's see what K&F has in store for us this time. So I went to their website, checked out what they had on offer, and it really looked like they're trying to up their game big time. My usual filter is this reasonably top-of-the-line Hoya variable neutral density filter that I use for video. And I thought, well, I can stack it up against this. It might not be fair, but let's give them a little bit of oxygen. Everyone's reviewing the PolarPro filters by Peter McKinnon, and sure, they're great, but there's got to be something else. So K&F is hitting the market with some slightly lower price points, and so let's see what they can do. Now, I don't have a rating system for ND filters because I don't want to make a habit of this because it's a lot of work for a video that not a lot of people are going to watch, but there aren't a lot of videos on these, so let's get into it. So what we have here for K&F filters are three different things. We have a regular circular polarizer, we have a variable ND filter, and we have something slightly unique. It's a circular polarizer and a variable ND built in together. Let's have a closer look at this one just for a second. As you can see, the entire structure rotates, but that's not what alters the variable ND filter. That's just so you can position it and rotate the polarizer. But then you have these knobs on the side that allow you to slide the polarization level of the ND filter, it's two polarized plates rotating, from one end to the other. And you have hard stops, and you have markings showing you where your halfway marks are. I love the hard stops, makes feel a lot easier, but at the same time, since the entire unit rotates, when you grab this, things can slide around. So it has its ups and downs. Altogether though, a lot of ups. Looking closer at this variable ND filter, a little bit more conventional. You have, again, the halfway markings, and you have hard stops. Really like that. It doesn't click or anything when it gets to the suggested points like the PolarPros do, but if we compare this to the Hoya, which costs twice as much, there are no hard stops. It's not dampened nearly as much, so it's very easy to knock out of place once you have it in place. Sometimes when you're filming with this, you just touch it a little bit and suddenly you're into X territory, and we'll talk about that more later on. And then a little closer look at the polarizer. Again, you have a rotating design, very slim, but also has great tactile feel on it. All of these K&F filters, they're highly knurled, and they have sort of a matte finish that's easy to grip, which again, when compared to the Hoya filter, it has a shiny finish, and although it's knurled, it is very slippery. I've dropped this a couple times. Now, I'm not saying that this is undroppable. I've dropped this a couple times now. I'm not great at screwing filters in, okay guys? But neither of them have broken, so that's fantastic. We're not going to spend as much time on the circular polarizer. You know what those do, and you have less chance for image degradation on these than with a variable ND filter. So we're going to test the variable ND filters because that'll really get us into what might go wrong. So first of all, I wanted to do a flare test. And so, let's stack them all up in video. You have in the top left the lens with no filter, and then the labels speak for themselves. What surprised me here was that at slightly closed down apertures we get more flare. That's just the lens itself. But what also surprised me is that not only are the K&F filters doing a better job than the Hoya in most circumstances, what I thought would be a bit of a chancy filter, our crazy double-layered circular polarizer variable ND filter, is actually doing better in the flare test. So we're starting out with a 35mm lens. We'll do wide open and we do stop down a little bit. But hey, that's easy. So let's jump down to 16mm on my Sony 16-35 GM and see what we can really get. It's a lot harder to control flares with a filter on a very wide angle lens. It's also a lot harder to control vignetting and other artifacts like that. So yeah, they're all doing a pretty good job, but the dreaded green blob does appear, but less so than any of the others in the dual purpose circular polarizing variable ND from K&F. This is really surprising. Alright, so that's great. They're doing wonderfully. Past ND filters that I used to have that were cheaper, they would do a terrible job of flaring. And there's also a chance that it's going to degrade your overall sharpness. Now, I'm only shooting on 24 megapixel sensors. I get an A7 III and an A9. But let's get out there and take some shots. We're going to have to do some long exposures because we're going to test these at the lowest amount of filtration, in the medium, and then up to the high end. And I really thought that by the time we got to the end of this, there would be some really terrible X artifacting. But we're not seeing an awful lot there. One disadvantage of this design, just in how many stops they planned for with this, I find that 32 stops, at least for video, is excessive. But that's not an issue for me. The issue for me is right back at the beginning of the scale. I find the Hoya starting at 1.5 is much easier to use for video. When you're already starting at 2 stops, it's a little bit more constricting. So that's one advantage that I see there. Alright, let's talk more about this X pattern. We're just going to put each of these on a lens, same lens, and we're going to cycle them through from the beginning to the end and see what happens. We're going super wide, 16mm. These are 82mm filter threads, the exact same size as the lens. And as you see, when we reach the end on the Hoya, you get that X hard, and I'm not even going past where it says to go on the scale. And why is that? Well, it's because we're going so wide. If I do this on a 35, it's not nearly as bad. Or even on an 85, I hardly see it at all. But why is the K&F doing so much better? Well, if we check out the design here, these K&F filters, they're kind of cheating. They go right out past the edge of the lens, and they get a lot wider than the Hoya does. And there are ups and downs to doing this. On the Hoya, you can slap this on an 82mm filter thread and still use your lens hood. That's nice. With this chunky fella, you're not getting a lens hood on there. And also, it takes up a lot more space. So I got this PolarPro cover to put on my lenses when I'm using a variable ND filter, so I don't have to play with the lens hoods or lens cap won't go on it. And that was great until I got to using the K&F filters. This thing isn't big enough anymore. I really got to stretch it around to get on there, and getting around this thing, forget about it. Now, I know a lot of people just don't even use a cover. You set it up, you take it down when you're using a variable ND or an ND of any kind. But I'm a bit of a hybrid shooter, and it's nice to be able to do things on the go and just pop it off, pop it on, put it in the bag, take it out. It makes life a lot easier. So these K&F filters aren't quite as convenient for that. Speaking of convenience, let's move on to just the general build and presentation of these. They all come in very nice packages. And this is a nerdy nitpick I know, I'm going over the edge on this, but they all come in different packages. What's the deal with that? I know this one, it's got the knobs on the sides, so it can't necessarily fit in the same sort of package as the other ones, but this one's a twist lock one, which is actually a lot harder to use than the Hoya one, which you can close down at any angle. I love this case, although I suspect it wouldn't take a lot of bumps and bruises. And then you have a hinged one with a clip, that's nice too, but they're all different. It's not a huge problem. The cases themselves don't have any labeling as to what sort of filter they contain, so they're not that specific. As you can see, I had to put labels on them myself. It's just nice to have consistency in your kit. If I'm going to pop out a filter, I don't want to reach into my bag and have to think, oh, is this a button or a tab or a twist or... Yes, maybe I'm a little OCD, but it annoys me. And as you can see, as we go through the sharpness test, the K&F filters appear to be sharper than the Hoya. This one really surprised me, and I actually went back to double check to make sure I wasn't looking at the wrong pictures, and it's true. And as you can also see, they clearly have different white balances. This doesn't bother me that much. I'm generally shooting auto white balance when I'm out doing a wedding, and when I'm in the studio, I will do a manual white balance to get everything right, and then they all look the same anyway. I don't really care about the color shifts as long as all the colors are still there, and they do seem to be. So I shot all these with a fixed white balance just so that you can see how much they vary in color temperature, and yeah, they sure do vary. But that sharpness, when we punch in to 200% on this picture, they're all doing fantastically, let me tell you. What I'm saying here is just the tiniest little nitpick, but the K&F filters appear to be sharper than the Hoya for much less money. Alright, there you have it. Now you saw the pictures, you saw the samples. Maybe you don't like these as much as I do, maybe they're too bulky for you. They're pretty sturdy, they're pretty heavy, but they seem to be pretty well designed. Also, they clearly have taken some inspiration from the new PolarPro filters. That's fine with me. As long as they get the job done, I'm happy. And they sure do. So, how much do these things cost anyway? These are all 82mm. So the Hoya, this is $116 for 1.5 to 9 stops. K&F, the combo one, this unique kind of over-architected filter, this one's actually $97. It's the most expensive of the bunch, but it also does the most and appears to perform the best. Then you have your basic variable ND from 2 to 32 stops, which maybe isn't all that basic, $67 versus $116. That's a fantastic deal. And then the circular polarizer, if you just want something to slap on that lens to reduce your glare and reduce the light reflections in your image, this one is dirt cheap at $20. I feel like my price might be wrong. Check the link in the description, but this is a solid filter. There you have it. K&F filters. They have upped their game and they've gone to the top of the market now. If you want to see more filter videos from me, let me know. Maybe I'll make them. I don't know. That was a lot of work. You better watch this video. So, until next time, let me know how you take videos and how you cut your light, and I'm gonna go take some photos.